Good morning and welcome to the Travel Forward stage. Hosted alongside World Travel Market, Travel Forward has become recognized as a place for the travel technology industry to come together and discuss how we create safe, connected, sustainable travel for the future. This year's show comes at a key moment for our sector, providing a platform where ideas, technologies and solutions will be discussed to enable the next generation of travel. My name is Charlotte Lamp-Davies. I am the founder of management consultancy A Bright Approach, and I'm delighted to be your host today. This 2021 hybrid event provides a brilliant combination of live and virtual opportunities. As a world leader in exhibitions, we're able to deliver a full live show experience safely and responsibly with face-to-face networking and a world of new technology products and solutions to discover. The show attracts travel technology professionals from over 100 countries worldwide, and we all come together to discover new developments and innovations and to learn from industry leaders over the coming 3 days. So, a very warm welcome to the in-person event, which we're proud to run again here at Excel, and we realize that for many, this is the first event you are attending over the last couple of years in real life. Next week, from the 8th till the 9th of November, we'll be running a virtual event, Travel Forward Virtual. This is all online, and you will be able to access it via the Travel Forward website. You will be able to continue the conversations that you have started here in person, and you will be able to access all of the content that's taking place here over the next 3 days, online, on demand, and in your own time. Travel Forward would also like to extend a very warm thank you to Sabre International, who are sponsoring the Travel Forward stage for 2021. We're delighted that they have partnered with Travel Forward, and we are very happy to have the Sabre brand associated with this conference. I'm particularly looking forward to speaking with Sundar in a minute, who is part of the first panel, which is focused on AI, and it is going to be kicking off shortly. I'll also be interviewing Scott Wilson, who is president of Sabre Hospitality Solutions, and we'll be talking specifically about retailing and personalization, topics which I'm sure will come up again and again throughout the next few days. There is plenty of time for you to stretch your legs and grab a coffee and catch up with people in between the sessions. But please, do not miss any of the fantastic speakers coming up today from companies like Sabre, Travolution, Skyscanner, BD for Travel, Nezaza, Hotel Planner, TUI Amusement, Vouch, Seater, Forward Keys, and RateGain, just to mention a few. Once again, welcome to what we hope will be an active and interactive day here at the Travel Forward stage. All moderators shall be taking questions on Slido, so please, anyone in the audience want to ask questions of the panels, don't be shy, let us have those questions. Once again, welcome everybody. Right, first up, and I hope that that has set the scene, first up we're going to take a deep dive into the world of AI and how travel is benefiting from this technology. I am very excited to introduce this first panel to you. So to the stage, I would like to invite Andy Owen-Jones, who is CEO and co-founder of BD for Travel. Thank you, Andy. And we also have Damia Serrano Miracle, who is the Director of Marketing and Research for the Catalan Tourism Board. Welcome, Damia. And last to the stage, we have Manuel Hilty, who is the co-founder and CEO of Nezaza. Welcome, Manuel. Last but not least, I'm going to take a seat here next to you guys. And as I mentioned earlier on, I hope that we are going to be connecting with Sundar Narasimham. If he's with us, he's coming in virtually. This is all a new experience for me to do this two-way, but there is Sundar. Hi, Sundar. It's lovely to see you. Welcome to our panel, Sundar. I should say that Sundar is the Senior Vice President and President of Sabre Labs and Product Strategy. Welcome, Sundar, and you gentlemen here with me on stage. So, To set the scene, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves and why AI came to be a focus of yours? Andy, why don't we start with you, please?
So back in 2010, 2011, I was running the Amadeus Leisure Group, and we ran pretty much all the websites across Central Europe for leisure companies. And what we realized at the time was that almost none of our clients took much interest in their customer decision process. And we felt this was a major missing in the industry. So we set out to try and understand what customers were doing. And one of our clients, Expedia, was really great to us when we started the company, and they let us model their customers for a year. And to model customers, you basically need to build a kind of replica of what they're doing. And we started off with all sorts of different techniques that some of you will know about in terms of clustering, random forests, all those kind of things. And we ended up building AI, machine learning-driven models of customers to try and infer what they were after. And back in 2013, people weren't that interested in what we were doing, so we made a couple of great hires who've stayed with us for 8 years and who've been able to build out amazing models of customers. And you can't do that in any other way than artificial intelligence, whether that's building rules or building machines that learn about them. So our whole focus is about how you add value to customers in their individual search process, and we don't see there's a better way to do that than modeling and understanding them.
Be fair to say you were one of the early adopters in travel?
I think we were. I think we're one of the resilient ones.
I know, and you're still here, which is a very good sign. Sundar, may I come to you, please, and tell us a little bit about sort of your background, but also your interest in artificial intelligence, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Charlotte, and glad to be here. I know I'm virtual. Hope you can all hear me okay.
We can.
My interest in AI actually began right after college, and I was reading a book by Nagel and Newman, which posed interesting paradoxes like this sentence is false. And I thought, I wanted to get into computer science and learn about complexity. In my first class at MIT, the professor threw a bunch of keys at me, and I immediately caught it, and he said, well, real intelligence is all about what happened in your brain there. It took less than, order milliseconds, and so all my thought about computation and complexity kind of evaporated, and I became deeply interested in what general intelligence that allows us to function happen. And to echo what the previous speaker said, and when I joined companies that were engaged in travel, especially now at Sabre, I became struck by how what a big gap there is between sort of what human intelligence makes us sort of, we travel to see the places we kind of love and people we care about, and yet machines are optimized towards pricing and not really providing, the extra legroom that I prefer on my travel, or combining the air and hotel experiences that together make my travel experience. So I became deeply interested in using what I kind of and applying it to real practical for people. And AI, combined with sort of where computers are today with the big data that we have access to, is really providing and paving the road to the opportunities that I see ahead.
Wonderful. Good tutor there, teaching you a very valuable lesson, clearly. Damir, tell us a little bit about how AI became a focus of yours.
Well, my relation with AI starts with it's a nice love story with Barcelona, with Mobile World Congress that started a long time ago there. And since then, Barcelona has created a very interesting environment about startups and companies that are working in deep technology. And one of the most important ones is AI. So we're experimenting from the tourist board with many of these companies. And we've been worried in the last 2 or 3 years to create a global strategy in AI from the country, to develop and to create the right environment, well-integrated policies in terms that all these small projects could run well and well integrated in the country. So from the tourism board, we are trying to lead also the project. Mm-hmm. And we are so happy to be here and to share the experience with all of you.
Wonderful. And last but not least, Manuel, what led you to join the panel today? Tell us about your interest in AI as well.
Yeah, and as Zaza, we provide a platform for the planning, booking, and post-booking processing of personalized multi-day packages. Now, this is a very complex type of product, and all of those processes that we automate with the platform, they carry an inherent complexity. So each time we think about how to make those processes even simpler, how to support our users even better, we basically inevitably come to the conclusion that the next step in providing recommendations, guidance, and support to the users is to leverage AI and machine learning even much more than we do it today.
So this is very much the next step
Yes.
for Nisasa.
Yes.
Right? So we have the early adopters and those that are coming into the field and kind of everything in between, I guess you could say. I want to get back to you, Andy, because one of the questions that was on my mind when I was preparing for this was, travel has always involved big sets of data, big data indeed, as it were. And does that make it an ideal environment for AI? I mean, or even more complex than one would like to think?
Yes and no. AI is nothing different from ordinary data in the sense of it's garbage in, garbage out. So if you're choosing the wrong data sets to manipulate, and you don't have good hypotheses, and you don't have a good understanding of what you're doing, you'll still go in a funny direction. For me, the most interesting areas are e-commerce is entirely based on averages in travel. So it's based on segments. You buy audiences as a segment. You buy it as a kind of breakdown of an average. Loyalty schemes and customer service is based on individuals. And so you know that person. And there's this big chasm between the two things, these average audiences and these individuals. And how to cross that chasm, I think, is one of the most interesting things in the whole travel sphere. And people who've tried to do it with rules-based stuff out of loyalty systems find it's too slow, too cumbersome, you can't set enough rules. And people who come from e-commerce, who just do it on hypotheses and testing, still don't care about the customers, they care about people. And as one of the guys from Forrester said, too often segmentation masquerades as personalization, for example. And I think there's a huge area in between where there's masses and masses of data, but there's two mindsets, one on loyalty, one on averages. And I think you have to change that mindset before you can apply the data properly. So our big challenge is not even so much in the modeling and the application, it's you've got different constituencies inside travel companies who are going in a direction that's not very customer focused. They're segment focused or they're loyal customer focused, and they don't really think about the individual. So I would say it's a perfect environment for data, but you've got very bad environment for mindsets that are very, very strong and will be built up over many years.
Indeed. Sundar, I wonder if you were nodding away there, you might want to add something to that point.
No, I think Andy put it very well in that the first generation of systems were really built with experts who understood what to do. And then today we have mostly rule-based systems. And then now, increasingly, as Sabre is introducing what we think of as products and platforms to provide personalized travel, we're really more in what I would say adopting the practices of the retail industry, trying to do those kinds of segmentation and automatic machine learning algorithms. But to add to what Andy said, there is actually another set of conflicts where companies think of their data as private, and they do not want to offer and share that with other companies. And similarly, consumers also want to think of their data as private. And in fact, this kind of principle is being codified by countries requiring their data from their citizens to be localized within their borders of their nationalities. And so as Sabre, which really provides the platform that sits at the center of the business of travel, we have to deal with the conflicting desires of the suppliers to maximize yield and conversion, as well as trade that off with what consumers and corporations as well as countries are putting in place for their citizens in terms of data privacy and data gravity, et cetera. But the exciting part about this, what I really see is, while there are walls being erected and data being made private, there's also an increasing sort of realization that by sharing this data, And by allowing algorithms that are smarter to operate over these disparate sources, you can really create that kind of personalized experience that Andy spoke about in a way that also creates collaborations between airlines and, say, hoteliers in order to create the packages that I think earlier was referenced to, because personalized travel really sits at the intersection of these conflicting interests.
Yes, indeed. I think what the consumer has become very well aware of is they are very happy to share data and information if they feel that it's in their interest and that they are protected. So there is GDPR and all sorts of other walls building up around it, but because the consumer is more aware, we also have an opportunity to service the individual consumers much, much better.
Exactly.
With Nisasa, sort of at the next stage and adding AI, tell us a little bit about how you see that sort of coming together for you guys.
Yeah, I think maybe to add to the other guys, I think in travel we also have another inherent, basically, challenge with our data, and that's the infrequency of the data, especially when you get to leisure. Maybe a little bit less in business travel. There you have people that travel very frequently, but in leisure, your customers maybe travel once, twice, 3 times a year, and then once alone, once with a friend, and once with the family. So it's really hard for machine learning to detect patterns. That's much easier for companies like Netflix, who sees their customers watch movies and TV series every day, or even more social networks that have very frequent touch points. And this is a challenge we have to solve as travel, but it also makes it interesting, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. Now, I thought on the back of this particular question, Damir, I would like you to tell us a little bit about, so this is in real life, I would like you to tell us about your strategy, the Catalonian Tourist Board's AI strategy, and how it came together and where it's going. So it's a nice example from the real world.
I feel like focusing in 2 sides here, because as a tourist board, we also are a client of all this technology. But on the other side, also we lead the strategy of Catalonia, to implementation of AI. And one side, and when we talk about the strategy, how we can develop this strategy, one of the things that we do realize is the lack of data literacy, that especially DMOs or local DMOs, we have about data. We have heaps of sources about big data right now, and the people even don't ask the right questions to use this big data. And here we have hard work to do in order to train the teams. I'm not talking a lot about DMOs. I mean, focusing on DMOs more than air companies or large hotel chains.
Yeah.
The DMO, we have a hard work in this to do in order to understand well how we can use all this data. There is another interesting focus that we are working on this strategy is about the tourism experiences. We have identified in the customer journey of tourism in Catalonia more than 100 touch points where the AI could improve the experience. It's true that we have started working with AI in local strategies in terms to manage the over-tourism in some areas, especially in Barcelona city. But this has not translated to the user experience. So the same decisions we're taking about how to manage better the flows. Later, we still don't find the same quality to translate to the user in integrated platforms that we could use and improve the better quality of the experience once they are in the destination. Hard work to do in that strategy also because it requires a lot of investments in hardware. I'm talking about augmented reality or virtual reality. Meanwhile, the tourists are in our destination. I think here is also a very interesting area where we still can develop a lot of things in the future.
Okay. We wish you very good luck with that. It's nice to be the front runner in some respects, and I think you guys are setting a good precedence for what can be developed, for tourist boards worldwide and implementing AI as well. I wanted to get back and talk a little bit about poor and good uses of AI. We don't want to name and shame, of course. One of my observations, personal observations, was that during the pandemic, which really obviously has hit our industry very, very hard, I think people were maybe a little bit quick to cut cut personnel for trying AI as a solution. And I think if anybody wants to add AI into the offering, then be very careful about how that fits with your strategy, is what I would say, because I have struggled with many a very bad chatbot during the pandemic myself, and I think that actually had people kept the staff, we would all have been a little bit happier. So good and bad examples, and how we actually get a deeper understanding of where it makes sense to implement AI. I will start with Sundar, please, if I may.
Thank you, Charlotte. In terms of good and bad, I would say I'll combine them together to sort of use a particular example. And this, going back to the previous comments about data and the sharing, one of the things we've been struck by as we introduce products to the industry in terms of what we call personalized intelligence, personalized offers, the partnerships that we have with technology companies is really what has generated the most excitement in my own mind. We partner, for example, with Google with their travel AI technology, and underlying it is a platform that they've created. And to use an example, they launched a product called Pixel Buds, which is a thing that plugs into your ear, but automatically translates. And so that when you travel and you are talking to a person in a different language, you can actually hear the person speaking in your own language, which I thought was a compelling use. And I think of that kind of application as the kind of application that could truly change how people, to go back to what an earlier speaker said, the experience of travel. On the other hand, these kinds of product can also sometimes, if you also remember Google Glass, sometimes aren't received well in the marketplace. So I'm anxiously awaiting to see whether these kinds of innovation will take hold and grow, much like GPS has become sort of embedded in our travel lives, or go by the wayside as some of these other products have.
Thank you. Andy, good and bad examples that spring to mind?
I do think Google is the best exponent of AI. I think whether any of that value will come into the travel chain is another question entirely, and I think they'll keep an awful lot of it for themselves, rightly so. I think AI is really an artificial model of what someone is doing in many ways, and sometimes they're much cleverer than what we can do, but anywhere where people are putting stuff together and putting it in front of a customer can be a good use of AI. And so typically every single web channel is out there and they show the same thing to everyone. And for me, that is a bad use of intelligence, whether it's artificial or people. Because it's like going into a shop 10 days in a row, and every time you go in and look for something, but the shop is not responding to you in some way. And I think good uses of AI will start to break down our e-commerce sites into less than averages and into individual approaches that wrap themselves around people. But I think you've got to have a complete mindset shift before you can adopt that. So really we're talking about the techniques and tools are there to apply mass personalization. I really don't think the mindset is there to do it. So you can have as many techniques and tools as you want, but if people are still focused on serving up the same thing to everyone, you'll serve that up in better and better ways. I think the challenges that companies like Sabre or others have is they don't have the end-to-end view of what customers are doing. And so you've got stuff above the API and below the API, and I think you can focus some very good focus on how to optimize what comes up from below the API. To close the learning loop with what the customer wants requires the OTAs or the tour operators to give that data back to the people who've got the tools and techniques to optimize it. And that's where the trust breakdown comes. And I think until you get a much kind of more constructive relationship between some of the big tech players and some of the small tech players, with more of the value going back into the the travel ecosystem rather than being taken out into the tech ecosystem, people will still struggle to give that data and to share that data. So I think we've got all sorts of organizational and learning issues before we get such breakthrough stuff in travel as you see in some other areas.
Thank you, Andy. I see the entire panel nodding away. So I guess we can say that retail and entertainment companies like Netflix, they are well ahead of the game.
Not necessarily. Yeah. So coming back to what Manuel said earlier, they have far more shopping baskets to look at. So if you just apply their tools into travel, it won't work. It simply won't work.
Right.
However, we're about to, I hope, sign our first big retailer who basically has got the same problems that travel companies have, but because our conversion rates are so low and our time periods are so long, we see the impact in a way they don't. I think there's an awful lot wrong in the retail industry where they see things as averages, but because they have so many shopping baskets, it's masked. And I think if we can crack it in travel, the retail market opens up in a very big way.
Yeah.
So,
Actually,
yes,
Charlotte,
Sundar.
if I can,
Yes, please.
if I can add something to what Andy said, as we've gone through at Sabre, introducing products for personalized travel, Andy hits upon exactly the kind of conflict that may exist, but actually is emerging in a way to facilitate that data sharing between the sellers, be they OTAs or others, recognizing that by essentially contributing that data in a data marketplace to the platform providers such as Sabre, we can actually turn around and give suppliers as well as the sellers the kind of optimal performance they need in terms of yield and, in effect, customer conversions, because we're able to create that kind of personalized offers that customers actually recognize and relate with, and click the button and therefore increases conversion. So what's really changing in the industry, to Andy's point, that this conflict has always occurred, but what's actually changing in the industry is the recognition of the industry participants, whereby sharing this data across that end-to-end perspective and enabling these kinds of algorithms to operate on bigger data sets, not only can you derive better insights, but you can tailor the experiences and the offers to what the consumers need. And that's really what the partnership with Google and the APIs that we are actually creating and providing to our customers enables them to innovate on top of our platform. So the game is changing in a way that post-pandemic, I really look forward to how we can make the world of travel better for our consumers.
So what I hear is very much collaboration and partnership, with other verticals as well, is going to be very key to actually cracking this particular nut for the travel sector. I wonder if either Damia or Manuel would like to jump in on this particular topic here. Manuel, did you want to add anything around? We've kind of touched now on recommendation, natural language. I was like customer service. There's lots of areas where we can do better, obviously.
Well, yeah, I think there are a lot of good applications for AI in travel. Definitely on the marketing side, showing better offers. That's key to actually earn serious money. You can improve a lot of processes. You can actually also do a lot of things in the back end on the supply side, because wherever you don't really have very good structured data, these types of technologies can help you process data. But one point that I maybe quickly want to touch on is the partnership with other verticals. To me, that's an interesting one, because potentially that could be a part solution to this problem of missing frequency that we have. If we manage to somehow collaborate with companies that see our customers much more often than we do, maybe when they go to restaurants, when they shop something, whatever, if that were possible, of course, that could also provide big benefits to travel back. Yeah.
Definitely the bigger picture will emerge, that's for sure. Damia, any last thoughts on this one, where we in travel can do better and how to implement AI better?
Again, the exercise I do is also thinking about destinations, and especially on tourism offices, the visitors' tourism offices, where AI are having a little revolution in the way that they work, the way that they organize. We had a very good experience. Meanwhile, the pandemic, when those visitor centers becoming the most loyal way to say how we were dealing at the moment the destination. We lost a little bit this leading role during many years, and now we come back with this. But AI is helping us to renew, in some sense, the way that the visitor centers are considering and manage and to be in contact with the tourists once they are in the destination, but also meanwhile they are thinking and evaluate to come to our destinations.
Okay. I thought when we caught up last week as well as a sort of like in preparation for today, we spoke a little bit about startups, and I remember we talked about the fact that there has been several AI high-powered services that haven't sort of made it over the line. Lola, Utrip, Doubler, there's quite a few. We know that it's tough being a startup for sure, but is there anything about AI that sort of makes the success more difficult to obtain, particularly when we talk from a travel perspective? Andy, I think, again, I want to go to you first, please.
I think big data sets are important.
Right.
And lots of companies are not willing to give big data sets to a startup, very understandably. We were very lucky in that some very large companies were willing to let us look at their data and do something with it very early on. Without that, that's difficult. And coming back to Manuel's point in terms of frequency of shopping baskets, on an individual level, if you're looking at a medium-sized tour operator, it's very hard to infer stuff from 100 shopping baskets or 10,000 shopping baskets. If you look across a market, and we've managed to model well over 1 billion journeys now, and so you see a lot of different shopping baskets, and you can infer all sorts of things from that. If you're just looking on your own at one small thing, it's very hard. But I think good startups with quality ideas will get listened to. If they're just building a slightly better mousetrap, then it's really hard to get traction. What I also see is large companies treat small companies asymmetrically, and they tend to want to pin down stuff and extract everything they can from a startup rather than make themselves available to a startup. And even though there are lots of programs, it's still very asymmetric, and a big company can kill a startup incredibly quickly, and you have to put things in place to protect that relationship.
Sundar, let me get to you. Rather than kill a small startup, I know that Sabre also works with a lot of different partners. I mean, are you? Is this something that you, as an organization, I guess you have to say yes, but maybe give us some examples of how you go out and work with startups in this field.
Yeah, actually, API-based partnerships and strategy is something that goes to the heart of how we approach the marketplace, in that not only do we provide our own data and use that data in order to provide better value to create better personalized offers and dynamically adjust prices to benefit our suppliers, we also have a completely open API so that startups or others can actually come and utilize these products and build their innovations on top of our platform. And so we really think of our platform riding on top of the infrastructure and type of AI technologies that are being provided by partners such as Google as really providing the platform with which not only startups, but one interesting thing I'd also say is before somebody starts a startup, they were probably at a university. And part of our interest is really make these kinds of data sets available for research, available for industry as well as academia, so that enterprising creative students can get access to this large set of data that we have as a platform provider and experiment, play with the data in order to figure out what are those interesting use cases they can target. And I think that's the way we've learned that even though we tend to think of a company we've been in business for decades, the innovative ideas really come from those smart insights that say, how about if you take one of these algorithms and really create a different offer, a different way in which you can provide a solution. In fact, the most recent example our travel AI technology has really created and was in the area of reaccommodation. When your flight gets canceled, when your travel gets disrupted, what are the ways you can recover? What are the intelligent ways that are personalized for you that you find appealing? So travel AI and AI in general is about really opening up, I would say, the kind of power that is unlocked in the infrastructure as well as the data that we have access to. And I really look forward to partnering more with companies and participants in the audience, telling you about how Sabre is approaching it in a way that I think gives benefits throughout the industry.
Thank you very much, Sunda. I'm literally looking at the timer going down and down. I can't believe that it's already been over half an hour. I will allow myself one last question with this panel, please. So just a quick fire round. We'll go to Manuel first, please. Most exciting parts of AI in travel for you, if you had to narrow it down?
You mean use cases or techniques?
Kind of your techniques, I guess, yeah.
I think in travel we need adaptive AI above anything else because things change so quickly.
Yeah, okay. Damia, some last words from you? Excitement around AI?
Well, something, and the last question, I don't know if I could just to clarify one of the good experiences that I think we are trying to develop in order that the public-private mixed administration as we are as a tourist board, to offer the startups companies what we call it innovative public procurement. So what we do is to buy a lot of big data that we put on the stage of the innovation hubs we are helping to develop, and now they could test with all this data. So what, in some sense, we try to collaborate with the startups in this barrier, which is to access to the big data to make this test. So I think it's a good initiative in this case from the public administration to invest in big data in order to have the startups. And the question was about what's next, what's more exciting.
What excites you the most, I guess?
Right now, I'm very worried about what is happening with AI to extend and to augment the immersion of the tourism experience. Okay. I think this is an area of AI that I still have to see a lot of interesting things in the following years. And it's probably one of the most exciting things that we will see in order to also get a difference from other type of destinations, to combine people to keep traveling, because this is the idea, to keep traveling.
Indeed.
To the destinations to see a 360 immersion experience in our destinations. This is a very interesting and challenging part.
It'll happen, but we're at the cusp of it. Andy, exciting areas in AI for you?
I think it's the way that lots of applications of AI are just going to break down traditional organization structures and make it impossible for people to work in silos. And I think things like personalization, who in your organization is in charge of personalization? Everybody.
Yeah.
And you can't procure personalization. You have to let it rip through the organization, and there are lots of things with AI that make that happen. Similar with all sorts of other things, AI means you can't expect individuals to master everything. You've got to have teams who will really try and understand stuff. And I think the human AI interface becomes incredibly exciting.
I couldn't agree more. Sunda, last words to you. What excites you the most?
Yeah, what I actually see is the transition in terms of infrastructure capabilities as computers and become more powerful and data becomes more available in these data centers that really are unimaginable. But the interesting part about technology isn't really the tech itself, but what I tend to think of is a shift of focus from platform providers ourselves, from what I would call a supplier focus to consumer focus. And what I mean by that is our early applications at Sabre, for example, on AI was aimed at sort of pricing intelligence, making sure that the prices were improved, or ancillary intelligence, making sure that baggage or seats were priced differently in order to optimize what the suppliers cared about. But where computers are going and what's now becoming possible is what we call bundling intelligence. What I mean by that is really combining air with hotel, the kinds of combinatorics that were hitherto, too overwhelming, that we couldn't contemplate thinking about all the flights and all the hotels together now become possible. So the really exciting thing to me is using this kind of technology and this kind of compute infrastructure to introduce products in the marketplace where you may be buying hotels on an airline website or airline products on a hotelier's website. Today, I really don't like the fact that I have to go to all these different websites in order to create my trip. And so to create the kind of products that I think we envision as consumers wanting to compare, buy, and that are tailored to us, I think becomes possible. And that's what really excites me today.
Thank you. So many, many possibilities. We could have definitely got on even longer, but I'm being told off now, so I'm going to wrap up relatively quickly. Thank you very much to everybody who's joined us on this session. Thank you to our panel, Andy, Damir, Manuel, and Sundar. Sundar, next year we hope to have you here live with us, of course, but it was wonderful nonetheless what technology can do, so we could all be together. I will be back to introduce you to the next session, which starts at 11:45. It's with Lee Hayhurst of Travolution and his panel, and keynote interview with, let me just see again who he's interviewing, Kei Chung from Skyscanner. So see you back here at 11:45. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.